Welcome to Redvee TV, supported by A-Star Recruitment for the 2021 season. And we don't have an instant fan reaction this week because of the game getting called off due to COVID. But more chance to watch the Euros this weekend.
Yeah.
Kev, before we still put a show out, we've decided to do a little bit of a Q&A session with some of the questions that have come into us on Twitter and Facebook. But remember, this is just our opinion. But yeah, you may disagree, you may agree. You can let us know in the comments below or on social media. I'm sure maybe some controversial answers, maybe, Kev. We'll see what we can get up.
Possibly. I do apologise for anybody who's having trouble with my light here. I seemingly keep going light and then a bit dark and then light again. It's because we're filming in the daytime for a change.
Well, you're just having a strobe disco after England's win.
Yeah.
Right, without further ado, we will start with the questions. And it's probably the most obvious question of all. That's coming from Ian Rigby on Twitter. Do we think that Theo Farge will be at Saints next season? I think my response to that is no. I don't think he will be.
No, I don't either. I think this is where the salary cap kind of works in once you start pushing people's contracts up and people want more and more money, which is right in a short career. You hope that they kind of put winning things above anything else, but it's a short career at the top level. It could all be over tomorrow for Theo Farge, couldn't it? And I think Huddersfield are the key contenders for him, aren't they? I can't see him staying.
To be fair, I think his future's already been decided alongside quite a few others. The RFL off-contract list has been announced. The players who are still available for next season: Kyle Amor, Joe Batchelor, Josh Eaves, Matthew Foster, Louis McCarthy-Scarsbrook, Tom Nisbet, Nico Roselli and Sam Royal are on that list, which means the futures of James Bentley, Lachlan Coote, Kevin Nagama and Theo Farge are pretty much already decided, whether that's the case of them retiring, going home, re-signing for Saints or going somewhere else. And you just get the impression if we have or had re-signed any of those, they'd have been getting announced sooner rather than later, just in order to quash the rumours and just settle the squad down a little bit. So you do get the impression that Theo will be moving on to pastures new. And as you say, Kev, it's the salary cap having an effect, and equally every squad needs that little bit of churn and turnover. And obviously Lewis Dodd by the club has been rated very, very highly for many years. And we've been looking for a pathway to the first team for him. It needs to be sooner rather than later now for him, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Just going back to that retain list, I think people aren't on that retain list if they've been offered a contract. They don't actually have to have been signed it. But say Lachlan Coote, who's been talking about potentially staying, potentially going home, depending on what him and his family decide. He's probably been offered a contract, so he doesn't appear on that list. Going back though, yeah, I think one of the issues that, again, as you say, the turnover of a squad, we've got young lads coming through and they can't always just sit in reserve. It's kind of one of the worrying things with all types of recruitment and retention at the minute, that squads do start looking a bit thinner and as soon as you kind of start promoting lads from within. But you've got to, haven't you? You've got to start giving Lewis Dodd a bit more game time. You've got to start deciding whether Matty Foster is worth another year or two. You've got to decide whether Josh Sim is the future centre for Saints. You've got to look at these things and kind of give lads a go. And as we say, with the salary cap, this is the whole idea of it. When people like Theo probably do want a bit of a better contract off Saints, and Saints can't afford it because we've had to start giving Jack Wellesby improved deals. We've given Regan Grace an improved deal recently. they're not going to be on less or the same money, you wouldn't think. Even if it's a £5,000 a year increase, it all of a sudden takes £5,000 off your cap. So then if Theo, and I doubt it will be, and I think we've offered £5,000 less than Huddersfield, but you do that across 6 or 7 players, all of a sudden you've got 30 to 40 grand that you've not got on your cap available that you might throw at Theo and say, well, you can stay with us, you're not going to lose out on too much money, and you're going to be a club that you've won 2 grand finals at so far.
And the salary cap is something over the years that we've managed spectacularly, easy to say, well, in being able to stay at that top table. I think since Super League began, we've never finished outside the top 4. We've always been in the playoffs. And I think we know essentially what we think a player is worth, and we will put that offer on the table as a club and leave it up to the players to decide whether they value, obviously, that little bit of extra income and contract, or they want to stay at the club and down at the top table. Do I blame Theo for maybe moving on to pastures new? No, I don't, because obviously we don't know what's been said either. It might be a case of we might have said to Theo that we want him to play at 9 next season and to allow Louis to allow Lewis Dodd to play at 7. And Theo might think, you know what? I've got this contract and maybe another one left in me. I don't want to be playing at 9. I think I'm good enough to be playing at 7 still. And that's what he wants to do with his career. So I think if he does move on, it'll be with everybody's well wishes. I think obviously there's a big contingent who would like him to stay. But equally, there are fans in the fan base who do want to move on from him. He is a player that splits opinion sometimes. Personally, I think he's more than good enough to continue playing for us and be in our side. But equally, I think we've got to give Lewis Dodd a chance, because essentially that could be the half-back position sorted for the next 5-6 years. Yeah,
as long as fans give him the chance, and as soon as Lewis Dodd doesn't have a good game, start jumping on his back. I think a lot is expected of the young man. He's probably got the personality to deal with that. But let's just remember that sport's quite fickle, isn't it? So as long as people give Lewis Dodd a chance and know that we're not going to start throwing the ball about, that's not how the team's set up at the minute, and people are quick to label him the likes of the next Sean Long or the next exciting prospect. He's got to find his way in Super League. He's getting minutes at 9. I can't see that being his position, to be honest.
I'll unmute myself.
Thank you.
That's going to sound really good on the podcast, isn't it, Kev? I managed to get it out. It'd be one of those situations where when the radio goes silent and the emergency music kicks in.
Yeah.
Okay, move on to the next question. 6 again on Twitter. 6_ again. If Wolf leaves, who would be the top candidates for you? My answer to that is, I've absolutely no idea. But in terms of names, but what I will say is, I think the club should continue the route it's gone down with the last couple of appointments. We've obviously with Christian Wolf and Justin Holbrook, looking for an up-and-coming NRL assistant, somebody who aspires to coach in the NRL, who fits with the philosophy of the club, and get them over. And if they're successful after 2 or 3 years and go back to the NRL, we do the same again. And I think that healthy turnover of coaches has not served us badly over the last couple of appointments.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody who kind of stands out, or who stands out, who, like, people were after Ian Watson when he was at Salford. I don't think he's going to leave Huddersfield that quickly. As you say, if we go for someone else, I'd like to see someone who brings a little bit more attacking flair to the team. I know our stats are great, but sometimes we can be a little bit, I don't know, sometimes a little bit, I'm going to use the phrase sticky to watch, where we do it, but there's no like plan B, that we kind of just keep going and going and going because we're good enough to. But I'd like to see someone who kind of brings the dare I say, Ian Millwood, Justin Holbrook style of exciting rugby, rather than just us going through it through strength and power and then being able to throw it out wide.
Does Paul Whelan's name enter the mix? And a bigger question is, does Paul Whelan's want to be in the mix?
I'd like to see Paul being kind of possibly go over to Australia and be an assistant over there and learn as much as he can before he comes head coach.
Does he want to go to Australia?
Well, I'm moving him there, so it's tough.
But do you know what? For somebody like Wellens,
I'd like him to learn a bit more.
For somebody like Paul Wellens, does the experience of seeing what happened to Kieran Cunningham taking charge of the club and then obviously his association ending, does that become a negative if for somebody like Paul Wellens, who maybe if he wants to stay involved with the club long term, once you become coach, is the next step basically out of the club?
Yeah, probably so, unless there's like a director of rugby that comes along, or you kind of get involved in the off-field stuff. I was going to say that I think last time I'm not saying we rushed into an appointment, but we gave it to Kieran. I suppose that was trying to follow the mould of Sean Wayne, but Sean Wayne had gone through all the age groups at Wigan and then got the job, so he kind of done a lot more of an apprenticeship. Yeah, that's it. I'd like to see Paul Wellens get a bit more experience, but I don't think that would stop him taking the head coach's role if he got offered it. And I don't think the kind of Kieran Cunningham appointment would stop him. I think Paul Wellens will see himself as his own man, and even possibly not even take that into consideration and just say, listen, if I'm offered it, it's because I'm the best person for the role and I can be a successor to it. So I wouldn't necessarily think that the Kieran Cunningham thing may come into a big part of his thinking anyway.
Okay, next question. Binagara on Twitter. What should we do if Lachlan Coote, Cavanagh and Theo Farge leave next season? Maybe fill out the squad a little bit, because I think you've probably got obviously Lewis Dodd, Jack Wellesby, who will probably find a way into that starting 13. Do we sign a centre?
Yeah, possibly. I think we've got to possibly look at one of them being a big signing to either fullback or centre. If Coote and Cavanagh is apparently going home, if they both go, I think one of them's got to be a big signing. And that's not like throwing people like Jack Wellesby and Josh Sim by the wayside. It's giving them 2 years to kind of turn around and say, listen, we're better than them. We're going to learn off them. We're going to kind of make a position our own. Because Wellesby can play in the centres as well. I mean, he's currently one of the first choice centres because Percival's injured. So I suppose it's the argument, and I've seen some of the questions. I've not really looked at them that have come in with where's Wellesby's best position. At a minute, as long as he's on the field and he's learning, yeah, you could play him at fullback. He's got a lot to learn at fullback. Got a lot to learn in the centres, to be fair. But his actual position in the academy was at 6. So we've got a couple of options at halfback there as well. If we've got Wellesby and Dodd and Lomax, if Farge goes, we have got a couple of options there. The Coote one's the one that worries me more than pretty much. No offence to Kevin Agama and Theo Farge, but the Coote one, he's so influential in our play. He's so calm at the back, and his kicking game, I don't think there's been too much of it this season, but over the past couple of years has been key to us. So I think we might have to find someone to do that. Jack Wellesby could be that man. Hopefully he's getting every bit of knowledge off Lachlan Coote that he can.
I think you're right there about Lachlan Coote, because at the end of the day, he plays fullback. He's so instrumental in everything that we do. And he's not blessed with pace. So that's not a real consideration of anything that's going to go by the wayside in the next couple of years. I just worry about the I talk about the churn of the squad and needing to freshen it up now again. I just worry about so many players leaving in one go. Personally, I think the club would probably be looking for Lachlan to stay if possible, but it might be outside of the control if it's down to personal reasons. And listen, it's been a weird time over the last 18 months with COVID, especially if his family are looking back to Australia and seeing everything opening up there. It must be difficult for players and the families. And you know what? As a club, I think we need to be considerate of that as well. If that is indeed the case, if rumours are true. Again, another player who would go with the well wishes of everyone if he does decide to move on.
Yeah, and I think he's spoken about that. I think he's spoken about how tough it's been for his wife, because he can go into training and bump into the lads, and even though it is his job, you probably don't see it. You probably just see it more as enjoyment, going in, having a laugh with your mates, playing a bit of rugby and coming home. So yeah, as I say, the Coot one worries me more than losing Nagama and Farge. As long as Percy can get over these injuries that he's picked up over the past kind of 12, 18 months, we're all right in the centres. But yeah, the Coot one worries me more than the other two.
Okay, Mark Cavanagh, should Dodd be getting more development time playing in the first team? It's hard, isn't it? Obviously, we're competing for trophies still, and if Theo Farge and Johnny Lomax are your best halfback pairing, you run with that as long as you possibly can. I think there is a plan there for Lewis Dodd. He's been on the bench quite a few times, and I think, like you said, Kev, with Jack Welsby, the important thing is just getting on the field in whatever way possible. And I think we're trying to find ways to do that the same for Lewis as well. I
think there's an argument that if Theo Farge is leaving, why don't you give Dodd a run at 7 if he's going to be 7 next year? Now's a good time to do it. That's it. It's tough because we're running so well at the minute, and Theo is playing well at the minute. It's tough to kind of turn around and say, well, sorry, Theo, you're not going to be here next year, so we are going to give the young lads a go, because you don't want to then take the detriment off the rest of the squad if your young lads through that development kind of don't follow the game plan that they've been given.
Would that be the equivalent of Spurs saying, oh, listen, Harry Kane's going to leave at the end of the year, so we're not going to play him for the rest of the season?
Well, yeah. Well, that's it. But and that's the decision of the club that the club then has to make. If they turn around and say, well, we wanted you to play at 9, we're going to start spelling you at 9 because we're going to give Lewis Dodd a run of half a dozen games at 7 because we want to see what he's like and see if we've got to go into the market for another 7. And that's up to the club. I'm not saying it's the right decision, but there's definitely an argument to be made there that if Harry Kane is leaving Spurs, that they could have easily turned around and gone, well, we'll give, what's the lad, Troy Parrott, the young lad who plays up front for Spurs, well, we're going to give him a run of half a dozen games at the end of the season and see how he goes. They didn't, but it's the argument that you can see being made that if he's not going to be here, well, play him at 9 and rest Roby a little bit more, give Dodd a bit more of a game at 7 where we expect him to play next year.
I can see the arguments, but my response would be, I want to win trophies. We want to win trophies. Yeah. And you go with what you deem to be the best side to do that. Maybe try and give Lewis a few games in the halves, and I'm sure he will get that before the end of the year. But in the big games, you go with your best 17.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. As I say, it's an argument that could be made. Tend to agree a bit more with you though that you do play your best 17 that's available, and worry about results when that best 17 aren't performing.
Samuel Taylor on Twitter, does it annoy you as much as it does him that when we get a penalty, we kick to touch about 3 meters downfield when Tommy used to do 40 meters at least? I'm not sure he ever kicked, well, not often 40 meters, but he definitely give it a big boost. Yeah. Is this a simple yes or no answer?
Yeah, we do it so it's quick. I'm sure we do it so it's quick, and it's not a case of like boosting it right as far as you can to kind of set up. I think we're, again, as we've spoken about on preview shows and the like, that we're confident in how we play. So it's just a case of a restart for us, and we don't care if we kick it 3 meters or 30. But as a punter on the sideline, you do think, oh, come on, I could have kicked it further than that.
I don't understand it, because you then spend 2 or 3 tackles making that distance up, when that could be your starting position. So yes, it's one of the odysseys, if that is a word. Is that a word? Oddities. That's the better word.
Oddities, not
of
oddity.
rugby league, which I don't think I'll ever understand. Matt MR3402. Has the 6 again rule done enough to have it stick about, or do you reckon it should be scrapped? Stick about with changes. My view on that is, I think we've discussed this quite frequently on the previous shows, it needs to be managed better by the referees. Potentially, if it's in your own half and it's on the first, second, or maybe even third tackle, you're allowed to kick to touch and gain that 3 meters instead, as Samuel was saying. Because at the moment in time, Kev, for me, teams are just, I've cracked it and are just using it to stifle attacks and reset the defence.
Yeah, agreed. I'd get rid. I'd just go back to penalties and kicking for touch. But if you are going to keep it, it does have to have changes. I agree with if it's one in your own half, if you're kind of from kickoff, we'll say, or from turnover on the last tackle, and a team's in their own 10 and the defending team holds them down, and all of a sudden it's a set restart, it makes it a 7 tackle set, but you've got your line set behind you, haven't you? So that to me is a penalty, and they can have the line set, but you get the opportunity to boot it into touch and march another 10, 20 metres down the pitch. I think when you start getting 6 agains and you start getting 2 in a set, even, like you do see it sometimes where it'll be, and I know it's not very often, but you'll see it where it'll be on the first, it might be on the third or the fourth, and it happens again. That's when it's got to be managed well by the referees, that if it's because a team is, I don't know, down in their own half, and kind of another team's trying to set themselves up because there's been a bit of a break, it's got to be a penalty to me. You can't just keep giving 6 again when it's of no benefit whatsoever to the team with the ball.
2 questions off the back of that, Kev. Firstly, do referees give 6 again for infractions that they would not normally give a penalty for?
I'd say so.
And secondly, when did the team warnings suddenly go out the window? Because that seems to be a rule that we just don't really enforce anymore.
Yeah, no idea. No idea on that one. I think so. I think if we went back to penalties, you'd see an awful lot less of them. I think you'd see an awful lot less of 6 agains.
And I think the 6 again rule has encouraged messing around at the play the ball rather than not. Because teams are happy, as you were saying, teams are happy to concede the 6 again and on the first, second tackle and reset the defence, but they wouldn't do that and mess around at the play the ball if a penalty was going to come their way or against them.
Well, that's it. You wouldn't, and I think, as you say, if it's in the, I don't know, like the attacking team, if they're still in their own half and just messing about, then it should just be a penalty. It's not like go to a captain and say, "What do you want to do quickly?" It's just a penalty. If you're in the attacking half, when you've got the ball, then you might be on the third or fourth. Well, reset it then. That's fine. But if it's on the first or second and you're trying to kind of scramble about and set your own line behind you, I just teams are getting wise, and this is something that I think when it first came in, people were kind of a bit wary of teams getting smart and playing the system, and I think this is a way of playing the system.
Does it give referees more chance to influence the game as well? Because if you're in the opposition half and the scores are close, the referees are just basically deciding whether you can have 6 again or whether to give the penalty and allow you to kick for 2. It's a strange one. It should teams have the choice if the rule does exist?
No, I don't think. I think it should be on the ref. I don't think it should be up to teams to kind of go for it. I think I've changed my mind on that, to be fair, because I'll probably be on the terraces screaming, why can't we go for the 2? But I do think the game needs to be easier for people to watch and referees to officiate, because when we start coming up with all these little rules, like the ball strip rules, getting binned after a season, good. I mean, we could have told you that at the start of the year that was going to be a terrible, terrible decision to kind of bring that in, and it makes life more difficult. To get people watching this game, we need simple rules that can be refereed, and yeah, you're going to get interpretation, but it's got to be a fixed set of rules that you know what's happening, rather than it be a case of one or the other. You know that the referee is going to give a decision.
Kev, I don't think it makes the game easier to watch and the rules easier with the 6 again rule, because how often in games are you seeing refs award 6 again, and even the commentary team aren't able to explain what it was given for?
I think that's one thing with Matt's question, where he says with changes, if we're going to do that, the referees have almost got to be able to say why. And I know you can hear it on TV and they'll say 6 again, hand on the ball, or 6 again, too slow, and then name the player. But when you're stood in the crowd, as we are going to start being more and more now, you don't know what it's been given for. You just hear 6 again, and then you'll hear the little hoot to go off, and it's tough. And I just think that things need to be made easier. They need to be made clearer for your average fan, not necessarily just for me and the likes of me and you and Matt and whoever watches these. It's got to be easier for your average fan to dip into and go, all right, he's given that because of this. It's just got to be, it's just got to be done better.
Danny Bridge on Bridge18 on Twitter asks us, Ian Millwood or Daniel Anderson?
Is that not a response? Is that not a response to 6 against who should be the replacement for Christian Wolf?
It may well be, but you can have it as a question since I've got it on the screen. Ian Millwood or Daniel Anderson for you as a coach? Obviously, Daniel Anderson, more successful, more ruthless. But for me, just for the sheer roller coaster ride, I'm going to go for Ian Millwood.
Fair enough. I'll go for Daniel Anderson then. It's because he had the best team, and I know it was a lot of it was down to kind of some of his predecessors and what had been brought in, but he was the coach who took us to winning everything. Although I would like to have him to have brought a couple more youngsters through.
I think we've touched on this a little bit earlier, but Saint Elsie Lynn on Twitter, is Wellesby best making fullback his own, or does he push for 6, maturing to 13 when he's older? And Lincoln Rob also says, does Wellesby have a best position or his strengths that he's so good in a number of roles? I think he will settle into one position, and I'm not entirely sure where that is at this moment in time.
Same. To answer Lincoln Rob's first, I think his strength at the minute is he's so good in a number of roles and he just gets on with it. I think that's the great thing about him at the moment. Obviously, as his career goes on, you don't want to be Phil Neville, do you? You don't want to be able to play centre mid, left back, right back, and just be a bits and pieces player where you play.
Phil Neville was a top class pointer.
Fair enough. Is that some kind of euphemism or something? But,
no, that's what he was good at pointing at things.
No, right, okay.
I saw him play for Everton for many years. But Kev, are we? I don't know. Is there a plan here? Obviously, Johnny Lomax will be 31 at the end of the year. Maybe have 2 or 3 more years in him. Does Jack Wellesby potentially end up in the halves in the future?
He could do, as I said earlier. He played academy at 6, so that's it. With Saint Elsie's question there, he could end up playing there. It could end up being the plan of for a couple of years he plays fullback and they've got someone else that they've got their eye on. I'm not entirely sure about maturing to 13 when he's older. and he has still got a lot to learn at fullback. I can see us trying him at fullback before we try him in any of the other positions, though. Just with how the contracts are going, I think next year he'll either be a fullback or a centre. I can't. Here's where I'm going to be proved wrong in another 10 years, but I can't see him playing at 13. I can see him putting his hand up for playing 6 a couple of times, though, when we need it.
Not a bad little problem to have, though.
No, it's not at all. And that's a great question, because when you think, does he put his hand up for 6? Like, does he put his hand up for playing 6? I think because he's used to playing there, maybe him and Lewis Dobb might have a bit of an understanding, because they're both still young lads, aren't they? So they might have a little bit of an understanding. But Welsby's been in and around the first team, so it's how much kind of academy time he's had since breaking through.
Is this now the mould of the modern player, though? Because you look at the likes of Zach Hardacre, Bevan French, Sam Tompkins. Even later in their careers, they all still tend to play in multiple positions depending on the needs of the team.
Yeah, well, that's it, and that's probably, again, going back to Lincoln Rob's question, that his strength is he can play a number of roles, and being able to play 6, 1, 3, 4, wing, wherever, is good for him. And I've said this before on some of our shows, that it's all good for his rugby education as well, especially if he's playing 1. He obviously needs to be, I don't think a bit calm is the right term, but almost not rush into decisions, not rush into things. And I think playing centre and playing wing will kind of get him a little bit more understanding of those positions. And once he gets more understanding of those positions, he'll be able then to tell his centre and winger what he wants them to do.
Next question comes from the Saint, Knowsley Rude. Interesting that Danny Richardson's been made available, great goal kicker, but I think his last tackle plays have not really improved. Any return to Saints must be ruled out, surely. Any views? My immediate one on that is he wasn't good enough when he was here. He's still not good enough now he's left, and he's not good enough for Cass. So why would he be good enough for us?
I think if we were to bring him back in, and I'm not saying we are or anything like that, but we'd be looking at him as a backup, and I don't think from Danny Richardson's side that that's where he'd want to be in his career, playing 3, 4, 5, 6 games a year because you've got a lad injured or suspended. It's a shame for him. I don't know whether a loan move this year might be good for him. I know, listen, he's probably got 5 or 6 games now to kind of prove to Darryl Powell that he should be playing at Wembley. I don't think he's currently going to get that chance. So I don't think he's in form at the minute. Listen, he won't come back to Saints. I probably would spend salary cap elsewhere as well.
I see his next move being to a Wakefield, Salford, Lee type of club, maybe even top championship.
London, Bradford, something like that.
Yeah, the game is all about opinions, but there's not many players who we've been proved wrong on when they've left the club and they've gone on to better things, especially domestically. So yeah, interesting one for Danny, but not for me, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame that he's not really kicked on at Cass, because listen, great things were almost expected of him at Saints. Probably a little bit too much, and this is where I'd urge caution with Lewis Dodd as well. That you can't turn around and you can turn around and hype, and then when it doesn't work, turn around and say get rid, because that's, as I say, sport is fickle. And it's a shame that it's not worked out for him, but as the Saint says, any return to Saints must be ruled out, surely. Yeah, I'd say so.
Mike Finn, do we think the RFL should have been set restarts, given how cynically teams are giving them up to get the defence set, slow the play down with the clock running? Yeah, we've discussed that one. Chris Harvey, though, would we like to see contested scrums return? I don't think they'll ever return. I think that they've been banished. I don't think they've been really in the game as long as I've been watching them in the last 25 years. But what is the one rule you'd like to see brought back, Kev?
Ooh, brought back. I'm not sure about brought back. Couple of rules. Well, I'm trying to think of something off the top of my head. Like, I'd like to see, when the charge down, when somebody like puts a kick in and you charge it down and the tackle count gets wiped clean. I'd like to see that stopped to kind of reward a good defensive play from a charge down. What else? I don't think, going back to his first bit as well, would you like to see contested scrums return? No, not really, because we tend to put a full back in there, and wingers start going in at second row. So I don't want to see contested scrums return. You look at rugby union, you look at the amount of time that they spend mucking about doing a scrum. It's just a restart to take some of the big lads out the game.
The one rule that I would like to see brought in, Kev, would be when a player puts the hand out to just knock a ball down, that is when it's going to be a certain try, and they've got no intention of intercepting it, and they just stick the hand out to deflect the ball away. I'd like to see more of a reward for the attacking side than just being given as a knock on.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of other ones. Like when a player tackles just as a pass is going out and it hits them on the hand and it's given as a knock on. Sometimes I think that is really harsh. And I wonder whether, like, when a player's not looking but they're actually going for a tackle, is that, I don't know, is that a knock on?
The thing with that is, again, I say I'd like that as a rule, but then at what point do you say a player's going for the intercept but hasn't got it right?
Yeah.
Are you putting more opinion on the referee rather than rules? So yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, more interpretation. I suppose another, like, one rule that I don't know if we are discussing it today. One rule is you see all the head-high shots, and whether they should start being banned, like rugby union have. A high shot is anything above the armpit. With the NRL bringing in sin bins for anything that hits the head. It's a tough one, because with that, I think that when it comes to head-high shots, people are saying, "Oh, the game's tough, and this is what we signed up for," and everything like that. But Boyd Cordner retired age 29 today because of concussions. I think you've got to bridge the gap between, yeah, we want a tough game, and yeah, we've got to look after the players.
I think they've got to bring something in there purely to try and mitigate the amount of litigation that is going to come the way of the sport over the next few years, because there's an awful lot of players who are going to start suing, and the rugby league authorities are going to need to show a way that of saying, well, this is what we're doing to try and mitigate it and try to remove it from the sport. And I think that's what that rule is going to come down to.
Probably, yeah.
Okay, next up, Simon Hay. When and where do we look for someone to step into Roby's boots? I would have been trying Theo there this year. I think that might have been the plan. But we haven't been able to, because maybe Theo doesn't want to play there, and that's not where he sees his future. So that might have maybe stifled that plan. Listen, I think if we could have, I think we'd have tried to have someone ready to step into Roby's boots now. I'm not entirely sure Aaron Smith and Josh Eaves, which may have been the plan A, on plan B, is going to work out. So we might need to go to a plan C, which is to use some of this salary cap money that we're going to have available into signing a 9.
Yeah, I agree. I can see us already being the market for a 9. I genuinely can. That's it. Aaron Smith's contract runs till the end of next year. So they might say that if they both go, we might need to bring 2 9s through again. They might have their eye on a young lad that they can kind of develop, as well as a first choice hooker. But I think, as you say, that the plan A would have been for Aaron Smith and or Josh Eaves to be the first choice, and us to bring a hooker through who could step into Roby's boots, or for whatever reason that they're not being seen as the options there. Aaron Smith could end up being a backup hooker for the next couple of years at Saints. But I think the fact that he's not getting picked ahead of Lewis Dodd to play backup 9 at the minute is in part due to Lewis Dodd needing game time and us keeping Lewis Dodd happy, but also is a reflection on where the club and the coach actually see where he is in the pecking order.
Neil Barlow, should the Super League introduce the Captain's Challenge as they do in the NRL? Straight yes or no? I would say yes.
You say straight yes or no? I'm not sure. I don't watch too much NRL, so I've never actually seen it happen and never seen whether it's successful most of the time or not.
I would give them one a game, Kev, on the basis that
Yeah.
it would stop shock of decisions happening where maybe the referee is not going to go and use the video, but you know you've scored or you know it's not a try. And at least you could knock it back on the team and say, well, you've wasted your challenge or you never used your challenge.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to 2019 Challenge Cup final.
I wasn't going to say
it. Yes, then yes, Neil. Yes, we should bring it in. Yeah. Because we'd have turned it around and said, look at the screen for that one, wouldn't we?
Adam Bold with ideas what the club and the sport can do to attract new fans and investment. Hopefully the World Cup can do a job to showcase the sport to a wider and new audience. My issue is, every time we have a World Cup, this comes around. We did it in 2012, didn't we? And it was meant to be bigger
13.
and bolder, and we never built on that. For me, I think the sport needs to have a deep look at itself about where it is. And instead of constantly chasing the big new dream, focus on the core. But
yeah, core, but you've got to look at core, but with expansion. You've got to expand to survive. I don't get the calls of let's throw the likes of Newcastle, who are currently second bottom of the Championship, into Super League, and we need a club in Bristol, and we need a club here, and we need a club there. Where's the people with the money to do this?
See, I think it takes the club like Toulouse. If Toulouse come up on merit, which they look like they're going to, yes, absolutely 100%.
Correct.
But you're right. You're right about not bringing teams in from random geographical places to fulfill a quota.
Look at London. London have been going for years and years and years now, and they've not quite set up roots there. They did something with Harlequins and then ended up going away from that. Now, if I was a rugby fan in London and I supported London Irish, or I know Wasps have moved out, Saracens, somebody like that, there's no way I'd be going watching a team who's just turned out in Harlequins colours. There's no way I'd have been buying merchandise that was in Harlequins colours just because I kind of followed this team. So that needed to be something that was stuck at or not done at all. That should have been a 50-year deal that you stick at, not just a couple of years. Now, they've gone up to Wimbledon now. They need to stay there. They need to stop flitting about places, and they need to stay in one place. With regards to what can the club and the sport do to attract new fans, if you're going to go club by club on that, for your games where you don't fill that away end, so let's look at your Catalan, Wakefield, Hull KR, teams like that who, and it's up to the home club, by the way, I will say, it's up to the home club to fill the stadium, not for away fans to do it. Move them to the side and start doing your community days, where you turn around and say, for every adult that buys a ticket, you get X amount of tickets at free, a quid, a fiver. Get people into the ground, get the youngsters into the ground, especially to showcase the sport to make sure this is what a live event is like. This is what you want to come and see. This is what you want to play in the future. And you can come and you can see this, and it makes it affordable for people in current tough times. And it makes it accessible to people as well. So I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see more of, we've got a round where it's the rivalries round. I'd like to see more made of stuff like that. Heritage round. I mean, that's a perfect chance for you to maybe, if you're selling 2 kits a season, a home and away kit, you could sell a 3rd kit because you could use it as your heritage round shirt. So if Saints kit ends up being a bit more red than usual, they might go back to the plain white jersey. They might go white with a blue V. They might go, when we played in royal blue, they might go sky and chocolate. And that's where you kind of get a little bit more money from your fans. And yeah, you are squeezing your fans, but you're making more of an event out of the game. I think sometimes, and this isn't a criticism at Saints, this is a criticism of rugby league. I don't think there's enough almost events and making something about the game outside of Magic Weekend, which I'll probably change Magic Weekend as well too. One of my ideas that I've got to think through here for Magic Weekend is I'd potentially split it up and not have all the games in one place. So if you want to grow the sport, you pick somewhere like Newcastle, that's fine, that you've got a real geographical, you've got a club there, and then you pick somewhere that you want to grow into, let's say Bristol again, and you send some of your teams up to Newcastle, you send some of your teams to Bristol, some play on the Saturday, all the Bristol games are Saturday, all the Newcastle games are Sunday, and you make a big event that's round the country. I mean, I was reading something, Andrew Foster, who we follow on Redvee, was on about Saints played Sheffield in Wales and in 1996, I think it was. And you think, what happened to the on-the-road games? I'm not saying do it all the time because fans don't want to miss out on the season ticket money. But on-the-road games, that's potentially something to go grab a couple of fans from somewhere where they don't really watch the sport, to kind of latch onto it and keep going back there, keep doing initiatives, take a Magic Weekend somewhere a little bit different, but kind of keep doing things just to make sure it's not an M62 corridor sport. Because if it continues like that, I'm not saying the sport's gonna die at all, but we can never turn around and say why is the sport so small if we just stick it across the M62.
For me as well, we need to stop trying to compare ourselves to other sports. It's a very parochial attitude that the sport's got, where we think we're competing against football or union. Do you know what? Sell our game as the game that it is, and realise it's at where it's at. Yeah,
that's it. Sell the best bits of your sport, as you say. So sell the big hits, sell the athleticism, sell the close games. I mean, the grand final from last year was one of the toughest games I've ever seen. So sell that. Sell the fact that it's tough, it's physical, but there's athleticism, there's great finishes, there's clever kicks, clever passes. Sell that, and don't be, as you say, don't be turning around, because there's nothing worse than seeing stuff like, oh, well, you start seeing, like, you wouldn't see this in football. And then we've got people diving, and the other week, Toby King asking for a card. Well, if it's starting to creep into our game, then we're no better than another game that you think we're better than. That's my issue. When we start, as you say, we start turning around thinking, oh, we are the holier-than-thou sport. We're not.
I always find it a strange one, Kev, when somebody who's like a celebrity from another sport is in the crowd and we've got to focus the camera on them 5 times, and like we're constantly looking for approval as a sport.
Yeah, I think that is. Yeah, you see Stuart Pearce in the crowd at Warrington, and all of a sudden it's all over him. Yeah, tell us. Yes, show him once each half. Show him celebrating the try if you want to, like you would point it at the crowd anyway. But as you say, there's no need to. Oh, wonder what Stuart Pearce would think of that. I couldn't care less.
Okay, less worry.
That's no offence at Stuart Pearce. It stove me head in, but.
Dave Hitchin, would you sign Sam Tompkins?
Would I? If he was the best available fullback, yeah. If he's the best available fullback, the most talented and fits in with what we want, yeah, I would.
This created some sort of debate on our Facebook channel. People say, you know, they use the old line about him of what they think of him. But you know what? He was playing in a Wigan shirt. If he was winding Saints fans up, he was doing his job well.
Yep.
If he came to Saints and played in a Saints jersey, he would give his all for this club, and he wants to be a winner. And for me, I'd welcome the man with open arms if he was the best available and he signed for us. And I think there'd be a change in people's attitude once they've seen a few of his performances for us.
Yeah. Can I just say, to answer his question, do you think Saints have the spuds to offer a deal to Tompkins? I don't think Saints will offer a deal to Tompkins, just to answer that. I don't think they will. But if it was decided by the club that he was the best available option, we were going to sign him on a year or 2 years, get Wellesby more game time, teach Dodd at half-back as well. He's 32 now, I think, Sam Tompkins, or he's in his 30s now. So he wouldn't be a long-term deal.
He'd be a great replacement for Coote.
Yeah, but that's it. Listen, if he's the best available out there, I don't we would turn around and sign him out. Would he come here? I don't think so. I genuinely don't.
I think he'll be staying at Catalan personally.
Yeah, 100%.
And would you blame him?
No, I once went over when Saints were playing over there, and we bumped into Leon Price, and Stuart Reardon was over there as well, and chatting to him at this beach bar, and he turned around and said, I didn't realise you were all over here. Like he was chatting to a couple of the lads, and he said, oh, what's it like? He went, well, I live around the corner from here. It's boiling all the time, and I've just got this view. And it was just like the med there, and it's like, yeah, I think that's going to be better than living in Bradford or St Helens or whatever, isn't it? So, but yeah, sorry, I would, and I know people would turn around and say, I wouldn't want to watch Rat Boy, and I think somebody said that they'd give the club the season ticket back. Why?
Support the club rather than a man. I'll tell you one player I potentially would be in for, Kev, as a backup. Josh Drinkwater, if he was available.
All right, okay, yeah.
He's on Catalan's off contract list. If we wanted somebody as a mentor for Lewis Dodd for a year or two, I think he'd be a decent signing. But maybe he'd probably want decent money as well.
He'd want decent money in probably a couple of years. I don't think somebody like that will come over just for a year.
Okay, last question. There are several players off contract this year. Which would you keep, let go? I think we've probably discussed Coote, Cavanagh, Theo Farge, etc. Just discuss probably the big three on that list of the off contract list who's still on it. Kyle Amor, would you give him another year? Or does it depend on salary?
It depends on salary and who's available.
And what sort of game time he wants as well.
Yeah, that's it. Because
I think he could quite easily go round again.
I think he could go round again, but it depends what direction we're moving in. If there's someone available who's a bit younger but doing the same job as Kyle, then I probably wouldn't.
Okay, Joe Batchelor. I think he's probably worth another year. He's probably not on a huge salary at the club. He does a lot of work on the community side as well. And he's one of those players you can have around the squad who's probably happy to come in. Maybe not happy, but you know what I mean? You need those sorts of players who play 7-8 games a year and slot in and do well for you. And for me, if he's willing to stay, he's young enough. Yeah, another year.
Yeah, I'd give Joe another contract.
And Louis.
I think Louis could go round again. I genuinely do. I think he's good for the squad because I think they love him, whether other fans don't. Some of our fans don't. But I'd potentially, again, looking at cost, looking at everything, looking at who we can bring in. I think that's the big thing with the likes of Kyle Moore and Louis. I don't know if the market's going to be a little bit wishy-washy at the minute, because are people going to want to come in from
I think Chris
the
Chester.
NRL?
Chris Chester was saying that, wasn't he? He was basically saying Wakefield have been looking for a forward for the last year and haven't been able to find anyone because the market is just so static. And probably COVID's had a bit of an effect on that as well. Players probably aren't willing to come over from Australia given the current circumstances and the lockdown conditions. And they're probably happy just to stay in the NRL a little bit longer. So for me, we may go around with a few of them players again.
I think, and listen, if we had to, I say that as if it's a bad thing. If we had to, we had to. It's the lay of the land. As you said earlier, you don't want to turn over too many. I'd love to keep Lachlan Coote. I think Cavanagh has made his mind up at the minute. It doesn't look like he is going to stay with us. I would keep Theo Farge. I'd love to see Theo run at 9 for a little bit, as we've mentioned as well. And then you've got all the young lads who are off contract as well. And I'd probably give most them another year because you need the squad. You need the squad. And I know we've got, with the lack of reserves and the academy's just started up, you need lads who can just boost it and may have to come in for a handful of games. Less than, as you turn around about Joe Batchelor, less than him, but need to come in and fill in. Yeah, we've got people like Jake Winfield who are coming through now who look real good. But yeah, that's it. I'm torn over the Kyle Moore one because I was speaking to a good mate of mine and he was like, no, we've got to move on from the likes of even like Kyle and Louis, and we've got to make the squad younger. But it's tough because with who you bringing in? I think that's the kind of $1 million question. That who's you replacing with?
Yeah.
If the deal's right, you probably do keep Kyle Moore around the club. Again, you can't. He's not going to be one of them who's causing issues. You probably keep him around the club. To be fair, I feel like I've flip-flopped on that one. But if the deal's right, the deal's right for Saints, and they might turn around and say, well, actually, we know he's available in 12 months' time. So, Kyle, this is your last year, and it will be reduced minutes, like he's had this year all off the bench.
And I think potentially the likes of Kyle, I think there was talk last year he was looking at doing building out for his career after the game as well. He was looking to do a teacher training course locally. So it might well suit him and his family to maybe take reduced money for a year or so and see out his career at Saints before he embarks on the next part of his life. Yeah,
that's it. It might well be, and he might end up staying round here. He might even have a look at the likes of, say, a Widnes, who are part-time at the minute, and go and sign for them for a year or two. Or someone else who's not too far away. He might even
don't waste Widnes on him, Kev.
Sorry, I do apologise.
He'd probably retire first and go and play community rugby.
He might go up to, say, Whitehaven or someone like that. I hope Whitehaven's his club. He might go up to there and give them a year or two.
So we've gone from playing locally 3 miles down the road to going on the longest car journeys you could do.
I'm going to have a look, make sure that Whitehaven is his club. Kyle Moore.
It is Whitehaven, right?
It is good. Oh yeah, he was born in Whitehaven. Let's see how far it is from St Helens. It's probably not.
It's probably
all right. You could probably drive it back home.
Yeah, it's only 137 miles, Kev, and a 2-hour 22 drive on the M6 on a good day. I'm sure he won't mind going up there at 5 in the evening for the evening training sessions.
Listen, if he moves to, he could just move to Lancaster. I'll map his life out for him. If he moves to Lancaster, it's a lot closer.
I think Kyle's staying around here.
Yeah, fair enough.
He won't be leaving sunny St Helens. Right, Kev. Not like you, who deserted the town.
Can you do, eh?
It's that fresh Widnes air, eh?
It is, yeah. The pong.
Breathe it in, Kev.
No thanks.
Right, I think
I get me ear imported.
I think we're done and dusted. If you have stuck this out, if you've listened to this as a podcast rather than YouTube, it means I've managed to manage it. But if not, and you're watching on YouTube and you've suffered us this long, go and watch the football instead.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And we will catch you this week on Tuesday evening for the preview show ahead of the Warrington showdown on Thursday night. Cheers, Kev. Catch you soon.
Thank you.